This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you're watching us on YouTube. Sure, you can listen to the podcast and what podcasts were originally meant to be listened to. You can still find us on Apple and Spotify, but you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search the PR Podcast on YouTube. You will find us nice and easy. Just look for that orange logo, right? It kind of jumps out at you. And you'll always find the our guest says that a headshot there in that cover art. But check us out on YouTube, the PR Podcast. Like, subscribe, share, notify, all those things that you hit when you go on YouTube. Now on with our show for today. We've got a great guest. Liz Brooks is a podcast interview marketing strategist and a client account manager at Interview Valet, where she helps build subject matter experts and brand leaders find the right shows, shape the right stories, and reach the audiences that are most likely to engage and convert. With traditional PR training and agency experience at firms including Allison Worldwide and Ketchum, Liz has worked with clients ranging from global B2B tech companies to health and wellness brands. Today, Liz applies the fundamentals of great PR to the intimacy and reach of podcast interview marketing. Liz, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Hi, Jody. Thanks for having me. Good to put a face to the voice.
It's fun to have a podcast strategist on the podcast. So, right, tell us about your background. Tell us about, how you went from traditional PR to working with podcasts as you do right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think, so I was in traditional PR for a few years before this. I worked with Allison Worldwide and Ketchum, as you mentioned. I think for those of us who are on PR, we definitely know that agency life is also a masterclass in discipline. So you have to cut your teeth pretty quickly. You have to learn what hits, what doesn't, and also you have to try to bring a fresh perspective, I think, oftentimes to the campaigns that you're working on as well. So you learn pretty quickly, trying out what works and what doesn't. Sometimes a great story placed in the wrong outlet ends up being a wasted story. I think, working with these traditional campaigns, we spent a lot of energy figuring out not just what a client wanted to say, but who actually needed to hear that message, and where those people were that were paying attention. In terms of building, podcast strategy into these traditional PR campaigns, that was something that built over time. I think when I first started bringing it in at the agency level, it wasn't met with resistance, but maybe a little bit more with indifference, especially from the subject matter experts themselves. If they didn't listen to podcasts or had only ever heard of Joe Rogan, how is that going to help their message? So I think a lot of folks hadn't really thought of it as a serious channel yet, even if, my own managers and heads within the agency themselves thought it was a good idea. We had to convince clients a little bit, I think, over time. But yeah, I think after 2 to 3 years, I kept seeing what I could do to, not only build that into traditional media, but to start owning those relationships and those placements. And over time, it was something that I started owning for all of the campaigns that I was working on. I think myself, I was an early podcast adopter. So that was just something that was top of mind for me when I was thinking of media placements and working with music a little bit too in the background. I think they were a little bit more receptive to podcasts like media strategy versus, your traditional B2B tech companies, what have you. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up falling into the workspace that I am today and the podcasting field, if you will.
Yeah, podcasting has gone through kind of fits and starts, right? I'm rewinding back to, at least in my memory, maybe 20 years, maybe longer than that, when, it was super hot. Apple Podcasts came out. You had Spotify come. I feel like came very quickly after that. But everyone was listening to podcasts. Then it kind of died out a little bit. And then there was a resurgence again. And now, we're kind of in between. We have lots of people listen to podcasts, but there are so many podcasts out there that it can be challenging to build an audience. How do you look at podcasts and putting your clients on the right podcasts? How do you evaluate what podcasts to put them on, and what do you think are the most valuable podcasts out there to start in?
Yeah, first of all, to speak what you were saying, the resurgence in podcasting, I think a lot of that comes from accessibility, right? It is easier for people to make a podcast now than it was before. And I think because people live such busy lives, it keeps getting busier and busier. We're commuting, we're doing all sorts of things, chasing after the kids. So, listening to the news, listening to stories, listening to media is also something that can be more accessible than sitting down to watch the news on TV or to read an article, what have you. So, I think that's part of what makes podcasting as media placement very valuable. Now, in terms of finding the right shows, and as you did just mention, there's so many out there, it's hard to build a large following or a large audience for many of these shows. That being said, our philosophy at Interview Valet is that better is better, not bigger is better. We spoke about Joe Rogan here like a second ago, but we do have a lot of clients that come over and they want to be on Joe Rogan because that's the biggest or only show that they've ever heard about. That being said, if you are a B2B or software client, Joe Rogan, first of all, is not going to want to have you on, nor is his audience going to be particularly receptive to your message. I think, and I can use a client example. I can't say any names, but a few years ago, I had a health and wellness client. They were an AG1 competitor, so within that space, but without saying any names. And we were definitely chasing the stars for them. They had big expectations, and we were landing bigger shows for them, like from the Dave Asprey to Bomb Life level. And we were doing ad campaigns for them on these larger shows as well. There was a lot of excitement around the booking, and the episodes going live, but ultimately, once they aired, we didn't see a lot of movement. And so there was a problem in terms of, ROI, like what are we doing here? So did a little brainstorming. It was one of those situations, don't ask permission, ask for forgiveness, if you will. So I started pivoting to smaller, kind of more focused longevity shows. So like Wellness After 40, things like that. They were smaller shows, but they were more niche. Their audience was smaller, but they were more engaged. And they I think I had like 3 or 4 placements within this space that were interested in having them on. So we're like, hey, these shows, we're getting them few and far between, but essentially like they're not landing correctly. It's not hitting hard enough. We have a lot of interest in this, given like smaller sector, but the audience is more engaged. They're more excited to have you on. Let's give it a try. And I think it was the Wellness Over 40. It was the first one they did. Within the first week of it going live, they had over 30 conversions just from that one show, which was more than they had with Bomb Life. So I think that's kind of the difference in between reach and resonance. A massive show with a general audience might make you feel visible, but a more tightly focused show where every listener is already brought into that topic, they're there on purpose. I think you're going to get more engagement from that overall. It's like shooting fish in a barrel versus trying to fish out of the ocean, if you will.
That's a good one. And it's no different from what we say on the traditional PR side of things, right? How many times has a client sat down across the table from us and said, we want to be in the New York Times? And we ask them,
Yep.
is that where your audience is? Is that where the people you want to connect and engage with are? Or are they at a more, hyper local publication or more local publication? Are they in an industry publication? Are they in a trade publication? It's all about
Hmm.
matching, like you said, resonance. I love that word. And it's all about matching the message with the media outlet that serves the audience that you want to get to. So great to hear you describe that. and you successfully maintained anonymity with your client. So that was nice job there. You've also said that your approach to booking podcasts is data driven. And I'm always, we're always interested in trying to provide data in PR in general, right? Because data historically has been so hard to come by in PR. PR is not really about activating sales, it's more about creating awareness. But you said that you've said that you like to use data and leveraging insights and leveraging analytics. How do you do that when you're looking at podcast placements with your clients?
So I will admit that is something that is still a constant struggle within our industry as well. I think for a very long time we were looking at data points like downloads and listeners, which oftentimes, unless you're actually like within the ad space, unless you're the advertiser, you don't get direct insight into that. And then also a lot of those numbers are self-reported from the podcast hosts or the shows themselves, right? So at Interview Valet, and we use a lot of different license databases as well. So it's kind of, we look at each show as a package. So we look at, first of all, the target audience. Is there overlap with the target audience of the show to the client? You know, regardless of size, is the messaging there? Is it the right fit? Then we also look at how long has the podcast been around? How often do they post? What is the quality of the audio or of the video that they're putting out there? Is it something that our clients are going to be able to use for repurposing, to post on LinkedIn, to continue building content off of just one interview? You know, will that be worthwhile for them? Does the host promote on their end? How often do they post on social media? Things like that. We do take followers into account, and we look at it as a whole too, like ratings and reviews, on Apple Podcasts, all the followers across LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, what have you. I think a lot of people get really hung up on YouTube followers, but that's still not everybody, not every podcaster is still posting to YouTube or like putting as much, I guess, effort into that channel as other more traditional podcasting outlets that are out there. So we kind of just have to look at everything as a whole, even including, age demographics, how, where do the listeners, where do they work, how much do they make? It's kind of scary that we can get that information, but that does matter to a lot of our clients as well. Where are they based? So there really is, and I'm listing so many things, but those are all the different data points that we kind of take into account when judging whether a show is going to be good for one guest versus another. And just because it's good for one guest doesn't mean that it's good for another one. They may be prioritizing different data. Again, more like perhaps income and profession versus location, if you will. So we kind of take all of that together and make our own like podcast authority score, essentially. That's something that we built internally with Pod Engine that we started rolling out. And then we use Podchaser and Listen Notes and just almost every licensed database you can think of to get more information about a show and their demographic audience. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and it is forever evolving too. So if you ask me the same question a year from now, I'm sure I'm going to be giving you a different answer.
Yeah, it's always changing, right? Now, when you bring all those data points to the client and say, "Hey, we want to put you on this show." I mean, number one, do you do that? Do you ask the permission before the forgiveness, like you said before, or instead of? But are you bringing them the data points? Are you making a case for, "Hey, you belong on this show, this show, this show," or are you just barreling ahead and saying, and then bringing them back the meat to the cave, so to speak?
That's a really interesting question. And that's something that has also differed from the traditional PR agencies that I worked with versus I was a pod chaser for a while as well. We had a different approach there. What we do at Interview Valet, and also something that I think makes the whole experience more streamlined, is that is an exercise that we do during the onboarding process itself. So we talk a lot about the target audience. We help them develop their speaking topics, their one sheet, all the materials that we're going to need develop their platform, their story, and present that to hosts. But also very early in that stage, especially when we're talking about target audience, that's when we really get into the nitty gritty of like, what kind of shows do you want to be on? What kind of shows do you not want to be on? So what I do is I develop a list. We call it an avatar list, where based on all the information that I have from them and the conversations we've had, I put together a list of shows that I think are going to be a good fit for them. That's where I present the data of the target audience, the demographics, why it's a good fit, as much information as we can provide. And then that's also where I like to stretch the limits a little bit, if you will. Throwing some shows with profanity, throwing some shows with religious or spiritual aspects, things that might stretch the limits a little bit of what they think they would actually be comfortable with. Maybe it's stuff that we haven't exactly discussed, but I think might turn them off. I want to know that in advance. And then, given that feedback, we use that as a compass, if you will, to find not only target the shows that they said yes to, but to find similar shows to those while staying away from the shows that they didn't like and avoiding any shows that are similar to those. And the reason that we do that is we reach out to hundreds and hundreds of shows throughout the course of a campaign. So realistically, if I'm presenting a client with a list of 700 shows and be like, please review this and tell me all of the ones that you are okay with us reaching out to, that is going to take so long. That's so much homework for them. They're never going to listen to any of it. They're probably just going to pick a handful of the ones that they recognize or have heard of. And ultimately, that would just be a nightmare. Also, like, our relationship with hosts is our bread and butter. Like, that's how it is with PR, relationships with media. So we can't really have hosts inviting guests on, and then having them like say no after the fact. Obviously, we're reasonable people. If it's not a fit for a real reason, we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk to the host. We'll find a replacement for them. We'll find a replacement for the client. But that's kind of the workflow that we've put into place now, just to keep things streamlined and to make things honestly easier for all three parties, for the hosts, for the clients, and for ourselves.
Sounds like a good strategy. When we think of podcasts, we typically think of subject matter experts, right? Someone who's got a story to tell, someone who knows something that wants to pass along some knowledge. And people typically gravitate to podcasts because they want to learn something new. No matter what the subject matter, it can be quantum physics or it can be gossip. It doesn't matter. They want to hear something new, right? They want to hear something they don't know. How do you approach booking subject matter experts onto podcasts? Is it as simple as the one sheet and would you like to interview them? Is there more, is there more in the bag than that? I mean, how do you approach the subject matter expert podcast pitch?
So a lot of times we've already have a long-standing relationship with the host, and they come up to us and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody who can speak to XYZ. Do you have anybody on your roster who can do that?" And those are the best days because we usually do, and they've come to us asking for that, if you will. Now, I mentioned like all these different databases that we use. We also use a lot of tools to run through shows. Essentially like putting in the information of our guests and then getting a recommendation of shows that would be the right fit for them based on all the criteria that we've spoken of that we're prioritizing. And then that's also how I put that avatar list together, right? And then from there, it's kind of like a bit of a spider web, just like finding, okay, this show is a good fit. This show already invited them on because the host saw the fit. So what other shows are out there that are like this show? And then just kind of like building from there and building from there. And then also as I mentioned, this is our bread and butter. This is what we do, and we've been doing it for, I think Interviews Valet has been around for 12 years now, 13. So we have a really, really long database of shows that we have reached out to, that we have heard from, that we haven't heard from. So we use all of that data that we have to determine who we're going to reach out to. And then when we do reach out, it's really about making sure that they know, A, we know what we're talking about. We're not an AI bot, like we're a real person. We have listened to your show. We know the kind of guests that you have on. We've listened to past episodes, and then building the argument as to why our guest would be right for their audience. It's not just about, being right for the host, but it's being right for their listeners, which we really prioritize. So we any previous speaking engagements that we have, we share that. We share the one sheet. We share proposed episode names, episode topics, as much as we can provide, kind of like doing the homework that the host would have to do in advance, so that all they have to do is say yes, basically, and use the materials that we've already provided them to build the episode. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and I have to say, I was I was very, very heavy on the pitching side before. Now I'm a lot more in like client and relationship management. But I do have a team of like 20 folks behind me that are like dedicated, like that's what they do is they send the intros and they personalize that. So it has taken a lot of work off of my plate. Basically, I'm like, these are the shows that I want you to go to. Now, do your job and get me those shows, essentially. So it's it works for me.
Uh, it sounds like a great strategy. A big part of being successful on a podcast after you've placed the guest, after the host has said yes, and you're ready to, jump on the show, is making sure that that client is prepped. Do you have any prep secrets that you use with clients to get them ready to go on that show? Because, it's like you said, it's not just reading off a bunch of talking points, it's actually having a conversation, just like we're having now, making it human and making it entertaining. Are there things that people should keep in mind when they go on a podcast? Best practices, anything like
I mean, again, a lot of that happens during onboarding, during, when we're building their platform, their story, and their interview topics. Depending on the experience of the guest, if they're really, really green, if they haven't done this before, we'll actually do a mock interview. Like we'll just do it internally. This is also something that we record and can provide repurposing material for so that they have something to start posting right away to social media. They can use those clips. We can direct hosts to their social media so that they can see those clips. We can also use that ourselves to share with hosts as, an example of their speaking if they haven't done interviews before. So that's something that we do there. I always tell my clients, authenticity is going to be your biggest friend within this space in terms of podcasting. You don't want to go on and sound too salesy. The host is going to hate it. The listeners are not going to engage with it. I mean, they're looking for personal connection and story and personal branding versus just sound bites. And that's also what you're going to be able to repurpose and share that's going to have more staying power and ultimately like more authority with that audience. Because when you go on a show, you're borrowing the host's authority, right? So you don't want to mismanage that in a way that, first of all, that host is never going to want you on, and then other hosts who hear that are not going to want you on as well. And then something else is consistency in your messaging. That each show, the conversation may be different. It might be a different subject, but you do want to be consistent with your messaging and with your personal brand so that if somebody listens to you on one show and then they find you on another one, they're like, oh, this is the same person. It's like not somebody who's putting on, it's not an actor, not somebody who sounds completely different on this show and is now acting like a completely different person on this show. And yeah, I think ultimately, and that's one of the things that makes podcasting, I think, like so special and so effective versus traditional media. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. But with the traditional article, a reporter is going to give you maybe 2 to 3 quotes. With a podcast episode, you're getting, at least 20 to 40 minutes of unfiltered conversation of material. And that's hard to come by. So you want to try to execute it as well as you can.
Great advice and a great way to end up our conversation. Liz, thanks so much for sharing your story and your
Yeah, thank
perspectives here
you.
today. We are not done with you yet, however. We are going to segue now. Rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. With your indulgence, Liz Brooks, let's begin with rapid fire question number one. What is your favorite news source?
NPR. And if we're looking, I do get a lot of my news from podcasting too. So I'm always listening to, I think it's Up First with NPR, and then for pop culture and also real news, but with more humor, the Daily Zeitgeist. They post twice a day too, so that way I can stay informed in the morning and in the evening.
Love it. Rapid fire question number two. What's your favorite social media platform?
Instagram. I should say LinkedIn. I should say a more like professional platform. But no, I'm here for the lulz and the memes at the end of the day. And I find that on Instagram. So
Good stuff. Rapid fire
yeah,
question number three. Coffee or alcohol?
why not both?
That is the right answer. There you go. Rapid fire question number four. What's your favorite on the run food?
Sandwich. Something with tomato.
Oh, the healthy sandwich.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go like, like
Oh,
pastrami on rye,
no,
go
no,
all
it
New York
doesn't
on.
have to be healthy. It can be fried chicken. It just needs the tomato to bring it all together. That's very
Oh, I
important
see. It's
for
all
me.
about the
Yeah, yeah.
tomato. Now I understand. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Very good. Rapid fire question number five. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Retired. Hopefully on a beach in Mexico somewhere.
Well, Southern California, you're pretty close, so that sounds
I'm
good.
getting there. I'm getting there.
You
I'm
get
working
there.
my way down. Yeah.
Liz, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
You can find me. So I do have a dedicated landing page for folks. You can find me at interviewvalet.com/Liz. And you can connect with me there and find out more about what I do and what we do. And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Liz.G, like golf.Brooks. I think I'm one of 60 something Liz Brookses on LinkedIn. So the G is what sets me apart. So that's how you can find me.
Sounds good. We will put everything, all the links in the show notes. Liz, thanks for joining us today. And
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Jody.
everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.